So, hello everybody, and welcome to the Magical New Beginnings podcast. And I'm super excited today to be speaking with the lovely Silke. Silke from Germany. Hello, Silke.
Hello, Sharon.
Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. Hello,
You're very,
everybody.
you're very welcome. And you are currently working, your company's called the Melody Learning Center, is that right?
Yes.
And you specialize in working with children with or neurodivergent children or children on the spectrum. What is the best way to describe?
Children, teenagers, youth, adults that are neurodivergent. Yes, I think that's specific.
And you have many modalities under your belt that you use with these wonderful children. So a question I'd quite like to ask you first is if you could just explain a little bit about what drew you, why, what is your why for choosing this specific area of speciality?
Yeah,
What's your why?
it's a good question. I started as a pediatric nurse and I had like a 2-week introductory time at a special ed school. And I accompanied a 12-year-old boy with autism. And I never heard of autism before that, right? And he wasn't speaking, he was scratching when he was excited, he was scratching when he was mad, he was scratching when he was bored. So I had like lots of scratches on my hands and I started to get to know him. And once I built a relationship with him, and that was fairly quickly, I looked more into autism. I wanted to know more about it. And I've just felt to be there for him and, had joy with him. And at the same time, a few weeks later, once my voluntary time there was finished, I got back there and he was back sitting, in a corner watching the washer turning and not really part of the group again. And that really made me emotional and caused me to look more into autism. So I've read books about it, and I always had like the vision me to work with children with autism at some point. And so several years later, I actually met a lady in the US. I was there for a year as an au pair, and she told me, oh, I'm working with children with autism. I'm doing this type of work. I was like, well, I would like to join you and, to see what you're doing. And so I got into this and just learned and visited courses and got to be part of a team and got to work in that direction. And since then, I've been hooked. And another part that probably is also, true is that I sometimes had difficulties expressing my emotions and being, with my communication, saying what I like or what I don't like, and the way, the environment kind of responded to that. So that probably is like the part that's also active to help them to find their voice, to help them to find their heart melody, their heart connection with themselves, but also with others. Yeah.
Wow, I love how you say that, helping them find their heart melody. So when you're working, do you work with the kids or you work with the families or everybody?
Yeah, originally it started with the kids, but more and more it was clear that it's the parents that need more support and that are more stressed, and that it's the cycle, and who is responsible? Where's the egg? Where's the hen? Where's the beginning? And I do see us adults be in the responsible position and starting with us adults and finding ways to regulate our nervous system, to find ways to be present, to see the child as the child is, and not what we would wish, or just focus on things that are not going well. And so it became more and more to work with the parents. So I do parent coaching, parent teaching. I hold workshops for teachers, for preschool teachers, and yeah, and then in the second step, it's with the children. So yes, mostly there are children that are not speaking yet, that are not using the toilet yet, even with an older age, that are not dressing themselves yet. So a lot of self-help skills that have not developed or not have been, supported or taught yet. And so helping the children to find a voice, to find ways, be it with, sign language, be it with pointing, be it with picture exchange communication, be it with words, with sounds, with even, maybe a talk or something that they can express their basic wishes and needs. So, and also expressing what they don't want in other ways than scratching or biting or spitting or hitting, right? And that relieves stress for the parents again. Once the children can sleep in the evening or at night, because that's one of the big issues, sleep, then it's also better sleep for the parents. If they have more sleep than 3 hours a night, then they're also more regulated. Or if we look at food, the dinner, lunch, breakfast issues that are, so there are sensitivities many times to food, but at the same time, it's also, the relaxed or not so relaxed setting. And then I cannot sit and eat calmly if I'm in stress, neither the parents nor the children. So we're looking at that situation. Things like, toileting, dressing, everyday activities, from getting up in the morning, changing from pajamas into clothing. I mean, the parents have stress in every single situation, but so do the children. And looking, how can we create that with more joy, with more, easier transitions, predictability for the children and for the parents, and supporting that. So.
Wow. So how about, what is your how? How do you work with people?
I guess I have all these tools, right? So
Can we show your tool?
You can show my tools.
Here we go. There's your amazing tools. So talk us through this, Silke. What first of all, let's start with the HEMRY coaching. What does HEMRY stand for?
HEMRY stands for holistic body work. So that's a way of hands-on, hands-off coaching that also, has NARM, neuroaffective relationship model, but also Thai yoga massage if it's hands-on. So body work, somatic experiencing, that would be more hands-off, supporting a person to feel more inside and sense what's going on. But then it's also EFT, emotional freedom techniques. That's one of the main tools, right? EMDR, that is also part of the trauma work. And then matrix reimprinting. And this is also how we got to know each other, right? Matrix birth reimprinting, light matrix, that's all part of the matrix reimprinting, supporting, possibly dissolving traumatically experiences that have been happening in early childhood many times. Then REBT, or in English, it's REBT. That's a part of a cognitive emotional therapy, relational therapy. So it goes more into behavior. Then yoga therapy, that's the Y. I did the yoga certification just for myself, right? To just get to know it, and then just went on and did the yoga therapist. And bringing that all together, because I noticed, it's so broad. Some people need more support in how to sense into the body. They are more in the head, and others might need a little bit more, direction towards the behavior part. And so I'm trying to bring that all together, while at the same time realizing it's not a tool. At the same time, it's the interaction, it's the relationship, and how do we connect? And that's one of the main part of my work, to bring parents and children, caregivers, teachers, therapists back together in a joyful interaction. How can we have fun together? How can we laugh together? How can we bring, this everyday struggle into something that might be also joyful? So that's finding the glimmers in everyday life. That's one of the goals too. And yes, there is hardship. Yes, there is stress, and I don't want to negate that, right? It's really important to acknowledge that, because many parents, caregivers have burnout, caregiving burnout, if they are, confronted with challenging behaviors. But also autistic individuals have burnout, because they learn to mask and to adapt and to camouflage their problems, and to try to adapt to a school environment that might not be made for them necessarily. And so finding ways, also teaching, the teachers, the therapists, the preschool teachers, how to recognize that there are possibly neurodivergent symptoms, specialties, and how to deal with that. That's a big part of my work as well. So that's like my trauma-sensitive education, where I'm holding courses and really trying to help for the prevention, right, to the preparation, that we don't get to bigger issues. The people come to me then with, the outbursts, the overwhelm, the meltdowns. I don't want to call them tantrums because for me they are not tantrums, but that's what they're calling often, you know. Oh, my child is not cooperating. Oh, the child cannot be in classroom because how can we get the child to do this or that? And to look more into, well, what can we then do to create a more predictable environment, a more stable, safe environment for everybody.
So what the autists have taught me is they are very sensitive to the energy of what is around them and very easily, very quickly go into overwhelm, sensory overwhelm, whether it's sound or light or just lots of human beings all being too close to them or too much emotional energy that's going on. So when a family first come to you, what is the first thing that you do with them?
Finding out what are the stressors, finding out what is the problem the parents see. And usually they wouldn't come to me if they wouldn't have problems, right? Yeah, so that's there is already a big need, a big pressure. And so many times it's, you know, they are not sleeping well, they are yelling, they are overwhelmed, they are behaving ways they don't want to behave in. They don't know how to deal with everyday life issues. They don't know how to go shopping. They don't have friends anymore. They don't go out anymore. They restrict. Then they're worried about the siblings. They don't have time for themselves. The parents don't have time for themselves. They're like often 24 hours involved. And if you only sleep 3 hours a night, and I have lots of parents that do, you know, then it's really hard to stay regulated and to see the resources to have creativity again. Like many times when we dissolve some of the stress and just find states of regulation, and it depends on how open the parents are. If I now tap with them or just find a way of breathing techniques or something to be more, you know, anchored and to be more present, then they say, well, this is so simple. Why didn't I think of that? Oh, sure, we could transition with the song. Why did I never do that? Right? So they get access again to their prefrontal cortex, to their logical and creative brain. And all of a sudden they find their own ways. And that's the main thing to help themselves. And then they can also have a different view to their children. All of a sudden, you know, we focus more on things that are going well. And once we focus on things that are going well, all of a sudden we notice more things that are going well. And once we notice more things that are going well, they are going well. So we try to change that cycle too. And then, yeah, usually parents and caregivers come up with way more ideas how to have fun together, how to enjoy each other again, how to not just see the problems and the fear of the future, anxiety of the future, but really be present. So that's one of the main, topics.
Awesome. And what changes do you see in the children?
I have children that have not spoken at all. They had no verbal or vocal communication. I don't want to call it verbal, but vocal communication. And they started to speak, and they started to speak a lot. Sometimes so much that the parents say, well, now I wish they would shut up again.
They're talking too much now.
Now they're speaking all the time and asking all these questions, right? But I love that. And then they also start to questioning sometimes, right? I have like youngsters who have, you know, who are now 15 and, you know, were 4 or 5 or 6 when they started with developing language. Now they are looking back and saying, Mommy, why did you do that? Why did you tell me this and that? You know, and they're starting to bring up things that also they might have processed traumatically. So there are situations now they can talk about, but the children who are not able to speak, they cannot tell us. So we can just assume. So there might be, you know, situations where the parents tell me, well, this might have been really stressful because it was stressful for me. And we just apply, for example, EFT in the evening to tap along the spine and just talk about what happened and dissolve it that way.
Okay, so you teach the parents how to tap on the children with the children?
Both on themselves first, like,
yes,
you know, that they first release their own stress. And once they are in a regulated state, and it's not about all being calm and, you know, happy and harmonized, which would be nice too, but now it's more about also being able to say, I'm really angry. You know, I could just smack my child right now. I'm not going to do it because I realize I'm right now just being triggered and being activated. And once I breathe and once I tap or once I have other ways of feeling into my system, into my body, then I can also see it with the distance again and see, oh, it's just a child, right? And the child is doing what a child does, but I'm the adult and now I can change the environment. I can change the moment. I mean, if it's a child who wants to support to get dressed, for example, usually the child can get dressed easily. And now it just doesn't seem to work for whatever reason, to realize, well, maybe the child just wants some connection right now. It's probably not about getting dressed, but sometimes it is. And sometimes the child just doesn't know at that moment, right? But then we can change every single moment. Like, okay, now I help you, and the next time you do it on your own again, or I help you a little bit, and then you finish on your own, to find more flexibility and in all the ritualized togetherness, which also is necessary. It's helping to have a predictable schedule for the children, for the teenagers, even for myself, to have a plan, what's happening, to be prepared for that, to announce it early enough, to help to transition, to maybe use a timer. Yes, it's a tool, and for some it might be bothersome to have like a checklist. Yes, I also have people that don't like checklists at all, and that's fine as well. But to find something to help to make the environment more safe and more predictable and more reliable, and therefore having more trust in it.
When I was learning something called T-Touch, Tellington Touch, which is something, a training method, if you like, with animals, horses, dogs, cats. And one of the teachers says something really profound that's really stuck with me, is that where knowledge ends, violence begins.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So you think about, you're trying to train a horse, you're training a dog, and like, first of all, you teach them to sit, and like, that's great, but then you want them to heel, but they won't heel because you don't know the right method to teach them to do it. But then you get angry, then the violence begins. That's, just a little brief explanation, but that stress, that frustration, it can build up very, very quickly. You can imagine on a day-to-day basis of constantly having to dress your child. I know most parents will have we're going through these different phases, but it must be really scary if you believe this phase of having to be this connected, help your child needing this level of help all the time. It must be, really worrying.
Totally, and often they don't get support. I mean, sometimes in the US it was easier. Most of the time the children got one-on-one aids, and you could teach them, or they were already pretty well trained. Many times here it's not happening. So then you might bring your child, and I'm not against the special ed schools, right? There is a time and space for that. But many times the children go into the school and then there's no feedback coming back. We don't know what's happening. The children cannot talk about it. And so parents think, yeah, it's all going well, and sometimes it's not. So I have children that could talk about it later. I've been locked into the bathroom because I didn't want to go pee, or I've been sitting in a chair and I've been strapped in, and I couldn't just leave. So yes, I kicked over the table. And all these things are happening. And if someone tells me, well, I've been bitten, I've been scratched, I've been spit at, and I have been too, or pulled my hair, but I knew I was then too close, right? I was in the personal space of the child. I was putting too much pressure on, expecting too much, helping too little, or there were other issues like the child was hungry, not healthy, tired. I mean, there's always a reason. And that's another thing I'm trying to teach, the caregivers and the people around the child or the teenager, to find out what is then the need below that, underneath that behavior. What is it that the child is seeking and not able to communicate, or not having the skill yet? And how can we teach the skill? But first of all, how do we recognize that there's a need? It's not because the child wants to treat, to kind of be mean to us, or to overwhelm us, or to be mean, or be mad. It's more, there is a need, and that's why the child is reacting the way they're reacting.
Yes, we tend to take everything personally, don't we? It's all our fault.
Yeah. And then
they're punishing us.
Yes, we're punishing us, or we're punishing the child. I mean, that's the other option. Or we're shaming. Yeah, we're shaming. Yeah. And we say things in when we are triggered and when we are not regulated that we don't mean, but the child is perceiving it as the truth. And many times beliefs are built through that, right? So I have
Yes.
like a 12-year-old when working with the children or teenagers themselves, and I'm allowed to talk about her, right? So her name is Lotta, and Lotta is now 12 years old, and she is in a position now where she didn't used to speak much and she couldn't express her emotions, right? She dropped on the floor when she got overwhelmed, and she could scream and kick and, you know, suck her thumb. But now she's at the point where she can talk about all that. And she finds way of externalizing stories, you know, where a little girl similar to her, or a young teenager similar to her, experiences situations, and we dissolve that through matrix reimprinting, through tapping, through, you know, different modalities. And it's so awesome because she can describe that, and she can, you know, she comes up then with how she senses it in her body, the color, the intensity, the structure. You know, sometimes parents or the adults have no feeling for that, but she can describe that, or she externalizes different emotions or parts, and she describes how they look like, you know, what the expressions they have and what they are dressed like, and, you know, and it's so awesome because that's her resource. Then she can go back to when she's in classroom and feels overwhelmed there, or when she's in an interaction with somebody where she feels, yeah, that's not going well, and, you know, to question herself at the same time working with those parts. And yes, there's shame already present. Yes, there's also guilt. There's also like a part that might like to push buttons a little bit, right? To find out where that person is at, or because it's fun how that person responds when they are being mad. I mean, those parts exist too. So, yeah.
Wow. So is this the child doing it on their own, or this is what happens when you do matrix with them? Because that sounds very much like doing, you know, the matrix work where you step back into the picture with your younger self who's going through the trauma, and you help your younger self go, you know, process it.
Yeah, we've done that in one-on-one sessions, and now she can do that on her own as well.
It does it.
She
Wow.
can draw really well, so she draws these stories, right? So she has a website. It's in German, but maybe we can post the link. So she draws all these pictures, and sometimes she creates songs for them or melody for them. I mean, once the nervous system is supported and regulated, then also the children, teenagers have access to their creativity, and that's enormous. Yeah, so it's really fun to watch that development. So, you know, from non-speaking to no borders, no boundaries, no I mean, no limitations, I want to say. That's
Yes. Amazing, amazing. And have you found, like I've found, is that there's a number of links, there's a number of things that I see when I work with families, and there's normally always birth trauma. There's normally always one or both of the parents are highly sensitive in one way or another, or either on some form of spectrum. I think we're all on the spectrum. We're just different parts of the spectrum. And vaccines.
Yeah.
So those are the three things that I see. Is the, you know, the physical damage that's done in the body, but also the trauma that's done, but also the hereditary part of it that's passed down. And it's almost like, you know, these children's come into these already highly sensitive, spiritual, in some respects, sometimes parents. And it feels to me like, I mean, because they have incredible potential and incredible ability, and they just think in different ways than how we do. But that also means that, you know, they can create things that we can't. They can do things that we can't.
Yeah, I mean, knowing that trauma can be passed down for at least 7 generations, and in my studies, even 14 generations, yes, I certainly think there is a part that could be trauma that's being passed on. And when working with parents, sometimes things come up. It's not, you know, necessarily that I'm the therapist for the parents in that regard, but sometimes situations come up many often, yes, during pregnancy situations, maybe the mom lost her own mom or father, or something happened in the relationship. So something like that might be, but also, yeah, birth trauma, like if it was like a cesarean, or the PDA didn't go well, or it didn't feel supported well enough by her surrounding, the mom, very, very often. So that's coming up very often as well. Or being told something might be wrong with the child during pregnancy already. So that could be. But I also have families where nothing seemed to be wrong. Everything seemed to go really, really well, and then all of a sudden, and I have my personal opinion about like the all environmental factors, and I do think that there's a genetical part, and we can have genetics turned on, turned off, right? So if this is the main reason, I don't think so. But then there are the environmental factors, and they could be a lot of things. And I think if a system is very sensitive generally and overwhelmed easily, then anything can overwhelm even more. And I don't personally think it's the vaccine itself, but sometimes something that's in the vaccine that might trigger, right? That maybe the aluminum, or the, in earlier times, the mercury, that might overwhelm the system. Or if I'm not really healthy, and many children don't process the minerals, the vitamins properly, so they might have deficiencies. So then that might have an influence. So looking at the entire picture is important. And I don't think, that, because many times parents feel guilty about specific moments, and I don't think we could prevent it. I think it's there, and we can make the best out of it. And we can see, how can we look for proper nutrition? How can we support, better sleep? How can we support being more outside, outdoors in nature? How can we support being more in movement, all these things that support the nervous system and help us to be more regulated overall. And that helps us adults, it helps the children, and also helping all the caregivers, the therapists, the teachers. So looking also into how can we change the school system? How can we change just the vision or the view we have of the children, right? It's not the problem children. And that's, like you said, right? Many times there are so many great resources. And once we discover them, they are not like in my perception, many of the children I'm working with, they're not like the sevens, right? But they have all their specialty. And once we discover it, and once we bring that out, isn't that all what it's about in life? To discover your talents and to develop them and to support that, to have joy with what you're doing and how you're doing it. So that's how I see it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So would you have any more case studies that you're able to share with us?
One I probably often talked about, but that's still the one that affected me the most with EFT even. I worked with a 9-year-old with Down syndrome, and she was not speaking yet. She was not using the toilet yet, and the parents were mostly, their main issue was she's in the car and she's just screaming. Whenever they drive with the car, she's screaming. The younger brother is screaming, and the mom is then screaming, and everybody's in stress. And it didn't matter if they went to a therapy, which might have sometimes been uncomfortable, or went to the playground or to the pool where she used to like to go to. She was just screaming in the car. So they sent me, a video beforehand, and yeah, it wasn't fun. So by, in one way, focusing on communication, focusing on how to create transitions on all that, that was one part. And we only had a 3-day consultation, so 3 times 5 hours. And it was the second day, and so we started kind of like the behavior way, desensitizing, slowly approaching the garage and reinforcing and having fun with that. And I got to open the door, but she never climbed into the car. And I'm not making children do stuff. I'm trying to motivate them, right? And to create moments where they would like to try it out, but she didn't get into. It's like, okay. So I was really wondering how to do the 3rd day and how to get to the point where that was the Sunday, that she would go back into the car on Monday and possibly not scream, but I didn't know how. And I think it was about a year or so that I did EFT. And I still had the mindset that EFT has something to do with the cognition, right? It still kind of was on me. Yeah, it's something you believe in, it's something you understand. And, so a friend of mine is like, well, just try it with her. I was like, she's not imitating me. She doesn't like to be touched. I mean, I have no idea how to do that, but I tried. So we came back to the spot where I could open the car door, and she was standing in front of the door, and yeah, I had some music. I mean, all the things that might possibly help her to transition easier, but she didn't get into. So I started to tap on myself and offered, to tap on her. She didn't like that, but what she liked was me leading her hand to tap. So she had fun with that, right? She was smiling, and I just, since I didn't know what happened and the parents didn't know, I just spoke out assumptions. Maybe it was too hot. Maybe something pinched with the car belt. Maybe the drive was sometimes too long, or maybe to a place where she didn't want to go to. So I just did that within one round, just one round. Every single point I said something else. And it's not about the language either, right? I know that. But then she climbed into the car. And once she was in the car, I turned on the music, and right away also brought her back out before she could even have a chance to scream or cry. And then she took my hand and she wanted me to tap again. And we did another round, and she got into the car, and it was never an issue again. And
Wow.
that realization that it was not cognitively, it was emotionally. And yes, even though I might not have had the right words for it, something happened and something dissolved. And that convinced me of EFT. That convinced me to believe in it, right? To apply
Yeah.
it more often. And so that's definitely my highlight of EFT. Yeah.
Yes, we all have our convincer stories, otherwise we wouldn't have carried on, working with it. But yeah,
Totally.
amazing. So I'm guessing, just listening to that story, that you really just offered her the opportunity just to be validated, her feelings validated, even though she couldn't express them and you had to guess. Just the fact that you took that time to to see her, to acknowledge her, and acknowledge that there A is a problem here, and B, like, let's find a solution, and let's just even guess at what the problem is. And yeah, amazing.
Yeah, not making her, not forcing her. I think that's also something that many children, once we are in a relationship, right, where they know they can trust me. I'm not going to make them do something they don't like to do, but I'm going to do everything I can to motivate them to try. And knowing that a no is no, that if I ask them something or I make an offer where they can choose, they get to choose. It's not I make you. And yes, I know in everyday life, and that's what I encounter with parents many times. Well, if the child is not brushing their teeth, then the teeth are going to get cavity, and they will need full anesthesia to get support with that. And yes, I'm aware that there are moments that there might be a must, right? And I have to. But that's what I'm teaching the parents, how to create the situation differently. Yeah, sometimes it's a song, sometimes it's a play, sometimes it's, playfulness, transitioning, sometimes it's acknowledging there is, right now, I understand you don't want to do that. I see that you're really frustrating, the validation of that, right? And yes, I know it really is not a nice thing, but it's necessary. And I'll help you. You don't have to do it on your own. I'm not going to force you. We are working together on that. And that already releases so much stress. And giving options. We can start with that or that first, even if it's pest or cholera. Having an option is for the children so precious, and for us too, right? I mean,
Yes.
I know for myself, even if it's like a really, terrible situation, as long as I can make a choice, I feel way more empowered. So
Yeah.
that's for the children.
Yes, and being a child is a very disempowering experience a lot of the time. And just as you're talking, this applies to normal parenting all across the board. The finding ways to validate your child's wishes, but also helping them understand that this is something that they do need to be doing in their life, and we can make it fun.
Totally. Yeah. That's the main thing. And, having for all senses, having like, I created something that's a comforting box where I collected just resources from all the families I'm working with, and from adults, from children. So for all the senses, things you can do, and you can pick your own comfortable box, and it could be a real box, or it could be just imaginary box where you have all these tools available for you. What smell do you enjoy, right? What colors do you like? What things do you like to hold in your hands or feel or sense? What's something, that helps you with your breathing, or blowing bubbles, or, singing, humming. I mean, anything and everything that basically regulates your nervous system and helps to activate your vagus nerve, right? So the tapping is one, especially too, right? But anything, and it could be music you really enjoy, and it doesn't matter what type of music. For some children, it's Volksmusik, for the German one. It's not mine, but for them it is, right? Then it is. Or for others, it's death metal, and others are liking mantras. It's the studies show it doesn't matter what type of music. It matters what makes you happy and what do you enjoy. So yes, we have that, and we can do it through earphones, and sometimes the children are still sensitive of having like a headset on. Then we practice that, and they fairly quickly, in my experience, they learn, oh, this is something good because I can listen to my music, right? So yes, it might not be so comfortable to have a headset on in the beginning, but I learned to like it because I like the music. And so are things that we can, teach and help to develop. And if I have a headset on and I can blend out noises from the environment, I might feel more comfortable being out in public. So we might be able to go out to like, to the city, even though there might be a lot of, sensory overwhelming situations, but with my music, I can tolerate it, maybe even fun. So looking at that with parents to have like all these tools available and bringing them with them and being aware of them. Sometimes they don't know that they exist.
Yeah, and I guess even just having the noise cancelling headphones on and no music playing, and then going into a supermarket or somewhere, that's going to bring down the sound intensity.
Totally. And with smells, yes, I mean, I have smell insensitivity, so it's certainly, being aware, perfumes, strong laundry soaps, air fresheners, all this artificial stuff, it's not so nice to learn to maybe stay more with the natural, odors and find other ways that. But sometimes, I have friends that really like perfumes. Like, I love you, but I can't stand being next to you if you're using all this perfume, and finding ways of communicating that and being aware of it. And the children don't know yet how to communicate that, besides maybe screaming and throwing themselves on the floor and being already overwhelmed before they notice this is what's overwhelming me. So we need the parents first to be aware of that and to recognize that and to realize that and to help the children find ways to protect themselves from that and help to adapt the environment. Or many people, I don't like being out in public where lots of people are, right? So it's like the pushing and shoving, like a Christmas market or something. It's not my thing. But we sometimes push children to do that, and so finding ways of maybe going there when there's not much going on, or like I said, be more in nature instead. Enjoying more the trees and the forest, and forest bathing. That's also part of my work.
Forest bathing. Tell us a little bit about forest bathing.
Being out in the forest and just watching now the fresh green, the little leaves coming out, noticing the smell, having all senses involved, the soft floor when you're stepping on the ground, having, seeing the deer, being aware of the animals around you, and recognizing the little flowers, the mushrooms. I mean, just the insects, watching, observing, and appreciating it. And that helps me to blend out, all the stuff that's going on in the world, which could be very overwhelming in itself, and we don't have any control over that. That's another thing where children and parents often feel like, I don't have control, right? I'm like completely left in the open. I cannot do anything, but we can help our senses. We can help our nervous system. So we have a type of control, we can decide what we are watching, what we are listening to, what people we are surrounded by. And yeah, I wish that the children get to have that opportunity as well, that we listen to them, what they feel comfortable with and whatnot.
So do you just work with people one-on-one, or do you do group work, or what does your life look like?
I work with the families, the parents and the children and teenagers. I work with teachers. Sometimes it's a whole group, sometimes it's a team, sometimes, you know, it's just the people involved with the specific child. Sometimes it's a school environment where they all want to learn more about, for example, trauma-sensitive education, being prepared, how to prevent, how to be regulated yourself, that you don't pass on things that don't need to be passed on, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's companies, you know, when they have teams, it's a lot about preventing burnout, dealing with burnout for the caregivers, where they have a higher prevalence of burnout, but also the autistics themselves, you know, autistic people, neurodivergent people who tend to mask, who tend to try to blend in, who tend to try to make it work, and then they crash at home. Sometimes the parents tell me, you know, well, it's cool, everything seems to be okay, they don't see an issue, the child seems to be happy, and then they come home and we have like the biggest outburst and meltdown. And teachers often don't understand that. They think the parents are crazy. They think the parents are at fault, right? Not understanding that the child is really pushing themselves, you know, and masking and adapting and fitting in, trying to fit in. And that costs so much energy that they don't have any more energy left once they get home. And then they're just, you know, dissolving. Or, you know, they have no other ways, no resources more available to do some stuff for their free time, where they have like, you know, hobbies or something. There's no more time for that or energy for that. And I don't know if you know that example with the spoons, the energy spoons. It's basically, I think it was a neurodivergent person who came up with that picture metaphor. You start the day with like lots of spoons of energy, and you use up already a spoon alone for getting out of the bed, right? Or turning off the alarm. You use up a spoon for possibly brushing your teeth, or for preparing breakfast or eating breakfast. So in worst case scenario, the parents and the child already have their spoons used up for the day once they leave the house. And so finding ways of creating more spoons, because we are not just left with a specific number of spoons. We don't have to borrow the spoons from the next day. We can create new spoons. And that's something that might be new, right? So we can create resources, we can create more energy, but we need, like, for example, the school environment to be aware of that too. And they provide those breaks during the day, provide those movement situations. And when observing children with neurodivergence or autism, especially, you know, flapping their hands is a way of releasing stress and enjoying themselves, right? Or humming, like I sometimes hear they're constantly murmuring or talking to themselves. Yes, it's a way of, you know, helping to regulate your nervous system. Or yeah, running up and down the stairs, running through the hallway. I mean, all things that keep me in the body and help me regulate. And that took a long time for me to realize that things that have been called behavior issues are actually great resources. We just need to find a way of, you know, framing it differently, and bringing also support that possibly the entire class is doing that movement, that not just that one child is like jumping and flapping. Everybody can jump. Or the TRE, right, where we shake in trauma work. I mean, that's a release that helps all of us. So sometimes we as adults learn all these like very specific tools, and when we observe the children, they're having been doing it all along. So that's something that I find very fascinating. Or the studies that come out now with chewing gum, right? That chewing gum is helping your nervous system to regulate by activating the vagus nerve. Yeah, how many children are chewing on things? And they have not been offered a gum yet because at school it's not allowed. And, you know, so I usually pass out that study to the teachers, like, look at that. During a classroom, during the test, during times they need to be really calm and quiet. Give them something to chew on. They're allowed to chew on. So they don't have to use their clothing or, you know, their fingernails or something else. So And the gum is the easiest.
Wow, it's all those little tricks of the trade, isn't it, that you wouldn't even think about. I mean, in my animal training, I learnt that if you have a dog, for instance, that bites, the best treatment is to actually work with the gums of the dog, and that it also de-stresses
Right.
the dog as well. So yeah, it's just amazing the things that we can do. Just before I came to Thailand, I actually came to Thailand for a month in March 2020, and I've ended up staying here because it's just such a magical place and I love it. But just before I left, I was working with a young man, early young teenage man, and all his life he's only been able to put white foods into his mouth, and in fact he didn't even like food. His favorite was milk. And when you saw him, although he was quite tall, his skin was like milky white, and he was quite thin because obviously he wasn't taking in any nutrition, mainly just milk. But when we went through, I asked him to take me through his day, and it was just like, you reminded me what you were saying about the spoons. It's like when he gets home from school, he is so overstimulated with everything that's happened at school, with all their energies of, you know, the rest of the kids and being in class and things like this. And he'll literally come in, and his mum will prepare him a glass of milk, and it has to be the right temperature milk, has to be very cold milk. And he literally will go and sit in one corner of the living room, and he would just drink his milk, and that was his way of decompressing himself, and I guess maybe adding another spoon to his pile to be able to cope with the rest of the day.
Totally. Yeah. And how easy would it be to offer a glass of milk or a glass of water, something to drink, or maybe through a straw or bubbling, or, you know, it's cool. I mean, that if we know, and I create that box with the children, the ones that can speak, right? We do it together. So they find out what feels comfortable, so that they have at least 10 things available to them. And then we talk to the teachers, like, please make that available, you know, allow them to have that box and have access to the box at any time they want to. Because sometimes, like, well, they're fidgeting with their toys, that's distracting the others. Why cannot all the others have all something they can fidget with, right? And if I have something I can fidget with and at the same time concentrate, then we accomplished a lot. Yes, sometimes there are things that are distracting, then we're looking at that, right? And finding ways, maybe during a break it's allowed, but maybe not during the main session. But that's something that individually can be looked at. But overall, that we have things that help us to regulate. And I mean, I work now mostly online, right, via telehealth, and it's good to get up in between and move. And we expect children to sit still for the whole day. I mean, I don't know how I would do it today. Right? So, or have something we can squeeze, or, you know, have some different textures. And I always have something around, and it might be nature materials, but something, you know, no one can tell if I have something in my hand. I think. Or some smell, or, you know, something that's helping us, or a nice color, or a nice light, or, you know, and knowing there's someone near me that feels that means well with me. I think that's the other thing, right? That people are trustworthy, that people can be safe. That's another experience they need to have.
Wonderful. We could talk about this for hours and days. Okay, so is there anything that we haven't covered that you would just like to finish off with?
I think maybe just really the putting the word out, the hope out, that, you know, there is a way of improving situations. Sometimes it seems like there's no way out, neither for parents nor for the children or teenagers, and to really maybe find support, maybe look for someone who can help you bring a different perspective. I think that can be very beneficial before it comes to burnout. I mean, I have now more and more at preschools, at schools where teachers are in burnout, and then, you know, the other colleagues have to cover, and then they are being more stressed. And in the end, it's always the children that somehow suffer under that. And so yeah, get support. find there's so many tools. I mean, these are just a few, right? And find your own tool, find the thing that works for yourself, and just the invitation to explore.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you, Silke. How would people contact you?
Through my website, www.melodycenter.ch or .de, both work. Through Facebook, HEMRY Coaching, Melody Learning Center, Instagram. I love taking pictures of nature, so you can find some pictures of me there. So yeah, thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you
You're
for
very welcome.
your time, for inviting me, and for your precious work. I'm so happy to have Matrix Birth Rate Printing and Light Matrix. It's always over and over again a very precious tool. So
thank you.
thank
Beautiful.
you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. And Silke, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. And let's do it again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.